Life has a way of revealing truths, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. For Samantha, a carefully planned family celebration in Rome became the breaking point in her journey of self-discovery. As her mother and family tried to erase her from their story, Samantha had to confront years of silence, manipulation, and exclusion. What followed was a powerful lesson in reclaiming one's own legacy and walking away from a life that no longer fit. Join us today as we explore her journey of courage, resilience, and the freedom that comes with taking control of your own narrative. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. I am Samantha, and I thought I was helping. I flew to Rome, excited and eager, thinking I was organizing a memorable birthday tour for my mother, Catherine. It was meant to be an experience of a lifetime, a celebration of her 70th birthday. An opportunity to make memories and maybe, just maybe, to bridge the distance that had been growing between us for years. But little did I know that this trip, this grand gesture, would be the final straw in a long history of silence and rejection. It wasn't just Florence where I was pushed aside, it had started long before. The little things, the sideways glances, the way her eyes would pass over me, the whispered secrets no one thought I could hear, had built up over the years. Layer by layer, until I was no longer sure where my role in the family ended and where the shadows began. My name had been written out of my own life. Seat by seat, line by line, face by face. Each time I tried to step forward, I was silently nudged aside, as if I didn't belong. I stood outside the rooftop restaurant, my heart heavy, watching my family stream in ahead of me. Not one of them turned around. Not even Callum, my brother. We had gathered in Rome for Catherine's birthday. A trip meticulously planned by me, flights, menus, villas, even the floral arrangements. All of it was my gift to her. The entire tour was sponsored by my company. But somehow, that wasn't enough. Even that wasn't enough to earn me a seat at the table. I scanned the long table, set beneath twinkling lights, its chairs arranged under manicured olive trees. There, every name card was placed with precision, each one scripted in soft gold calligraphy. But mine? It wasn't there. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't tremble. I wasn't surprised. I had come to expect this. It had been happening for years. Sweetheart, Catherine's voice sliced through the air. It was always so sweet, so syrupy, the kind of voice that made strangers believe she was elegant, refined. Maybe you're tired, she said, her words wrapped in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You don't have to stay for the whole dinner. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an instruction, dressed up in politeness, a soft nudge to remind me that I wasn't welcome, that I wasn't needed. Callum, barely looking up from his seat, offered a half-hearted excuse. Maybe someone just miscounted, he said, his arm brushing against Vivian, his latest companion. Her eyes flicked up for a moment, barely registering the interaction, before shifting away. Miscounted? You don't miscount your own daughter at a table of 13. I took a moment to compose myself, nodding once to acknowledge their dismissal before walking away. Inside, I didn't know if I needed to scream or simply breathe. But there was nothing left to say. That was when Marco, one of the staff, approached me. I remember his name because it was the first time in a long while someone had treated me like I mattered. Signora Halden, he said softly, glancing over his shoulder as if he was afraid someone might overhear. Your name was on the chart this morning. I saw it myself. But this afternoon a new version came through. Your name was removed. I'm sorry. I nodded, a faint smile on my lips. Thank you, I whispered, and turned to look at the woman in the mirror. She looked flawless, her hair pinned neatly, lips bold enough to be noticed. I had chosen everything about this moment. But in the end, it didn't matter. I wasn't even meant to have a seat. This wasn't the first time this had happened. My mother had been doing this to me for years, erasing me slowly and deliberately from every family moment. When I was 11, she invited all my cousins to see the Nutcracker in New York at Christmas, except me. Her excuse? You had the flu, darling. Except I didn't. I had a spelling bee. At 17, She told me Callum wasn't a long-term man. At 29, she made sure our wedding photographer took more photos of her than of me. I was always just slightly out of frame. Now, here I was again, at 38, still outside the shot. I walked back toward the dining area, the clinking of glasses and low laughter filling the space. As if I wasn't there at all. They were mid-toast when I arrived. And Odessa, my mother's best friend, raised her flute, smiling as though she were the queen of her own fairy tale. I stood behind Callum, waiting for the laughter to dip, for the moment to shift. That was when I spoke. Quietly, clearly, but without emotion. I said, "Seems I'm not family." 12 heads turned, Vivian blinked, Odessa's smile twitched, and Callum's shoulder tensed. They hadn't rehearsed for this. But no one moved, no one reached for me. No one said my name. And then, I walked away, my footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway as I retreated into myself. Into the solitude that felt safer than pretending everything was fine. This was how it had always been. I wasn't a part of their story. They had written me out. And I was done waiting for them to notice. I didn't cry when I left the rooftop. But I didn't sleep either. My suite at the Grand Palazzo was immaculate. A vision of precision, elegant crown molding, floor-to-ceiling views of the city, and a king bed made with military precision. But despite the perfection of it all, it felt like a cage. I stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the Arno River stretch into the distance, glowing softly under the Tuscan moonlight. In my mind, though, I wasn't looking at the river or the bridges. I was replaying the moment when Catherine had said, "Maybe you're tired, sweetheart," as though I were just a passing guest in my own life. It cut deeper than any of the other times. The next morning, an envelope was slipped under my door. The card inside was trimmed in gold. The kind of paper used for official business. It was the press itinerary. The one I didn't remember requesting. Inside was the agenda for the week's media events, interviews, photo shoots, and the scheduled press walk at the gala entrance. My name wasn't on it. Not even as an event producer. Vivian's name was there twice. Once as Odessa's legacy partner and again as the brand liaison. I picked up the phone without hesitation and dialed Marco, my publicist. He answered on the third ring. His voice thin, brittle, like he knew the weight of what was coming. "Diana," he started, his tone apologetic. "Odessa said you weren't interested in the press portion. She said you'd prefer to stay behind the scenes this time." "She said that?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. "Overwhelmed?" That was a new one. "I assumed you signed off," he said. I could hear the hesitation in his words. The uncertainty. But I didn't have the energy to argue with him. Instead, I thanked him and hung up. Later that afternoon, I walked into the conference suite to review the lighting for the birthday tribute. As expected, Vivian was already at the podium, adjusting her angles in front of the small AV crew. She looked radiant, perfect waves of hair, lipstick to match her blazer. Her movements fluid, confident. She fit the part. She had always fit the part. I approached the coordinator and asked where the speaking notes were. He handed me a folder labeled, Vivian Keynote. I opened it and felt the familiar surge of anger coil in my stomach. "Oh, Diana." Odessa's voice cut through the air as she walked in. She was as composed as ever. Her smile expertly crafted. "We talked about this. Remember? Vivian's taking the toast this year. She's got a fresh voice. Something that connects with the younger generation. You know how the press loves that." I nodded, though I was numb. I didn't need to hear the rest. I knew the story they were telling. The story where I was no longer needed. It wasn't just about this toast. Or this moment, it was about everything I had given. And everything I had lost. Vivian was now the face of their narrative. I had been replaced. I was irrelevant. I walked back to my suite. Numb. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just felt the weight of it all, the years of erasure. The silent cutting of the threads that had once tied me to my family. But this time, I wasn't going to shrink. I wasn't going to wait for permission to matter. I opened the bottom drawer of my luggage and pulled out the leather-bound journal I hadn't touched in months. "They don't just want me gone," I wrote, the words flowing out of me in a steady stream. "They want me forgotten." I underlined it twice. It wasn't just the tour. It wasn't just the dinner. This was a pattern, a deliberate attempt to erase my existence. My whole life, I had been taught to play my part, to fit in the frame they wanted me to occupy. But I wasn't going to do it anymore. I wasn't going to quietly fade into the background, to be edited out of the family narrative. This time, I was going to take control of the story. I closed the journal and sat in the silence of my room, letting the words sink in. It wasn't revenge, it was release. And the next time they tried to push me out of the frame, they would remember who built the entire damn table they were sitting at. The evening was heavy with the weight of what was happening. But I stayed composed. I didn't let their actions, so calculated, so deliberate, drag me into a frenzy. In my silence, there was power. I had been behind the scenes for long enough to know the game. I had built everything they were now trying to claim as their own. And I would dismantle it just as easily if I needed to. Later that night, I slipped into the ballroom for the gala event. Though no one had invited me to join the festivities, the chandeliers above cast a soft glow on the polished floors, the air still smelling of fresh marble and perfume. I moved through the room, quietly, methodically, just as I had done countless times before, creating the ambiance, designing the experience, making everything look effortless. But the difference was now clear. This was no longer my event. I watched as Catherine stood at the center of the room, radiant in emerald silk, smiling as though she were a queen crowned in her own glory. Beside her sat Vivian, ever the dutiful protégé, soaking up the applause, the attention. I stood in the shadows, away from their spotlight, watching the manufactured scene unfold. They believed they had won, that they had taken everything from me. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't going anywhere. Marco spotted me from across the room. His expression shifted as he saw me standing in the corner, detached and quiet. He walked over, offering a polite nod, though there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "We're loading the final tribute video," he said, trying to sound casual. "Do you want to preview it?" I said yes. I needed to see what they had prepared, the culmination of their narrative. The story they were telling the world about my mother's legacy. The screen flickered to life, showing old footage, home videos of Odessa and her triumphs, of our family's history. There I was, age 6, clinging to her skirt at a museum gala, and later, on a pony at a family ranch event. My heart tightened, but not for the reasons I had expected. I could feel it coming, the moment when I would disappear from the frame. Erased once again. By the halfway point, I was gone. The video continued without me, showing Odessa's recent triumphs, the awards, the interviews, the media coverage, and in every public moment beside her, there was Vivian, shaking hands with partners, laughing backstage, accepting flowers at fashion events. The montage, meant to celebrate Odessa's legacy, became a tribute to Vivian's rise. My throat constricted, but I didn't let it show. I turned to the AV tech, my voice calm, steady. "Can I see the cue sheet for the slideshow?" The tech handed me the laminated checklist. I scanned it, my fingers tracing the segments with precision. There it was. Segment 1. Odessa's early vision. Segment 2. Odessa and her protégé. Segment 3. Odessa's legacy speech. Vivian's live segment. But there was no segment 4. No mention of me. No acknowledgement of my role in any of it. This wasn't a tribute. It was a transfer of power. And I was no longer needed. I took a photo of the cue sheet with my phone, 2 angles. No flash. This was for the record. For the next time someone asked me if this was all just a mistake. Because I knew it wasn't. It had never been a mistake. This was their plan all along. Back in my suite, I uploaded the photo to my secure drive. I labeled it, Odessa Tribute Eraser. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. About leaving behind evidence of what had really happened. when they tried to rewrite the story, when they tried to make it look like I had never been a part of it. I would have the truth. And that was all I needed. The next morning, as I sipped my black coffee in the quiet of my room, I could feel the storm brewing outside. The chaos they had hoped to control, the narrative they tried to spin, was slowly unraveling. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I had let go of that part of me, the part that longed for validation and recognition. Now, I was standing in my own truth. I had walked away from a family who believed I was invisible, who thought they could erase me from the story they were telling. But I wasn't gone. I was right here, writing my own narrative, and this time, no one would get to dictate it but me. Later that day, I sat in a conference room with my legal team, finalizing all the legal aspects of my contingency plan. Everything I had done for the past years, every event I had built, was now being dismantled with meticulous precision. But there was something freeing about it. It wasn't just about the contracts, the tours, or the glory they had taken. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, my power, and my name. By the time I left Florence, there was no dramatic exit, no tearful goodbyes, just a quiet, dignified departure. I boarded the plane to Chicago with no regrets, no fear. The world below me, the rooftops of Florence, the memories, no longer held me captive. I had let go, and in doing so, I had found my freedom. Life had a way of testing us, of teaching us lessons in silence and absence. But in the end, the only thing that matters is how we choose to walk away from the things that no longer serve us. Subscribe to the channel for more life stories.